Hi, my name is Michael Kruzmark, and today I'll be giving a presentation on what one could expect while conducting business in Japan. Say you're about to board an overseas flight, but you're not going on vacation. You're about to take a 12-hour flight from LA to Tokyo for a very important business meeting. It's an important business meeting, and you must be on your game. As if that wasn't enough to keep your mind busy, this is also your first time visiting Japan. No matter where you are traveling to outside of the U.S. for business, it is always a great idea to get a decent grasp of the culture of the country you are visiting. It'll make your trip more personally enjoyable, and it will greatly enhance the probability of it being a successful trip for your career. For this presentation, we'll take a look at some helpful tips and pertinent information as to what one could expect to experience when taking a business trip to the great nation of Japan. Japan is a country rich in history and traditions. For the first portion of this presentation, we'll be taking a closer look into Japan's culture when it comes to business, and some of the basic points that will be important for you to learn. In the U.S., we must, of course, respect all of our colleagues, but we have a certain set standard when it comes to establishing the hierarchy. In Japan, however, they have a distinct way in how they gauge status. Respect for age and seniority is very important in both social and business settings. They may not be the boss, but if someone is of an older age, they will be respected just the same. In business, it is common for the Japanese to interact and deal with others that are considered equal in the hierarchy, whether it be by age or status. There are many different aspects that affect a person's status, such as their position within the company that they work for in itself, where did they get their degree, and what is their marital status. Knowing what your status is and where you land in the hierarchy could actually be helpful in certain situations. But for now, let's move on to the Japanese business ethics. Knowing and understanding a few of the basic and important business ethics will help your Japanese colleagues trust and respect you as a business person. A lot of attention and respect is focused on the act of exchanging business cards, also known as meishi. In Western culture, business cards are casually propped up on desks and exchanged with a low chance of ever being looked at again. In Japan, however, there's a strict approach when exchanging business cards. When someone is giving you their business card, the first thing you should do is bow as a sign of respect. And then when you take the card from their hand, you want to hold it with two hands by the corners and examine the card carefully. Many Japanese people think of the business card as their link to the other person. The Japanese use bowing in place of the handshake that we use here at home. Bowing is important in the business realm as it is as much of a sign of respect as it is a simple greeting. The younger person will always initiate the bow, usually at a 45-degree angle. Men keep their arms to their sides, while women are allowed to cross their hands in front of themselves just below the waist. When meeting a group, always greet the highest ranking individual first, followed by the oldest, and then continue down the line as you normally would. Business relationships are held in high regard in Japan, and one of the best ways to build your relationships is by gift giving. It is customary to not only send a gift after a successful meeting or transaction, but it is also custom to send a return gift. Gift giving can be a very complex thing, and it can have many nuances and rules. Another good time to think about gifting is when you meet a new business partner for the first time. Pay attention to their status in the hierarchy, though, as that can determine your gift's value. When sending a return gift, it is customary that you usually send a gift that is worth half of the initial gift's value. Figuring out how much to spend on a gift can be overwhelming when attempting to use a new currency. So here are a couple of tips on what to expect when navigating Japan's. Japan uses the yen as its currency, and the international currency symbol in the market is JPY. In the U.S., we generally use 4 coins in everyday life, coming in the values of 1, 5, 10, and 25 cents, while in Japan they use 6 different coins valued at 1, 5, 10, 50, 100, and 500 yen. They also use 4 different bills, which are called notes. They come in values of 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, and 10,000 yen, although the 2,000 yen note is somewhat rare and is not seen very often. The current exchange rate as of this presentation is 100 yen for every 71 cents American. So some simple math, we can find that if we wanted to spend $100 American on a gift for a business partner, we can expect to spend 14,250 yen. Tipping may feel like the right thing to do, but in Japan it is considered close to being an insult. Especially with restaurants and bars, we feel it necessary to show our appreciation for good service with a tip. But in Japan, there's a strong sense of pride from businesses, and they consider good service as part of the deal already. While tipping is strongly frowned upon, it certainly won't get you locked up. Japan's legal system has been growing in a more globalized sense as of late, but is still very distinct with an interesting history. The biggest difference between the U.S. and Japan's legal systems is the type of legal system itself. The U.S. is run by a common law legal system, whereas Japan adheres to a civil law legal system. The history of the two legal systems is also contrasting. The United States inherited a lot of England's legal systems from the start, while Japan is a much older country and has inherited influences from other legal systems throughout its history. In the late 19th century, Japan introduced a new legal system based on a lot of German and French influences. And then again, after World War II, Japan looked to the Western cultures and adopted many of our legal approaches. Hopefully, one doesn't have to worry about Japan's legal system while on a business trip. Instead, they should be worrying about some of the customs that are prevalent in Japan. Japan may be one of the most technically advanced countries in the world, but they still uphold many centuries-old traditions and customs. To this day, you are expected to take your shoes off before entering many places. Whether in your own home or entering someone else's, it is encouraged to walk around in either barefoot or in your socks, but that is not the case in a professional setting. In many places, you will not be able to walk around in your socks, but if you are asked to take your shoes off, you will most likely be offered a pair of slippers to maintain a formal vibe. The reason for taking off your shoes is due to the importance of cleanliness and orderliness in Japan. It is considered an extreme honor to be invited into someone's home. The last thing you want to do is bring outside dirt and germs into their living space. To be clean and orderly is to be noble and respectful in Japan. The Japanese culture takes pride in others' opinions and wants to be considered in the highest regard possible. For a long time, well before the COVID-19 pandemic, you would often see many people in Japan wearing face masks. The first thought might be, oh, that's just what they do when they're sick. And to a point, this is true. It is polite to conceal your germs as much as possible, but the normalizing of masks in public boomed in the early 90s when they were marketed as a way to avoid allergies and hay fever. As more people started wearing them, it became more normal to see them, and soon masks were being worn for many different reasons. One of which is a way to simply keep your face warm during the winter months. It is also considered normal to wear a mask if you just simply don't want people to see your face. Wearing a mask makes it so people are less likely to approach you if you are not feeling so social, and also it makes it easier to hide your facial expressions. This is not the normal reason, but it is an acceptable reason for wearing a mask in public. But what about interacting in a business sense? What should you wear? What should you talk about? And what can you expect when negotiating? In the business world, it is fairly customary to start off a meeting with small talk. You can expect to be asked how you are finding your stay in their country and your thoughts on the food and the sights. It's a good idea to always find something to be positive and compliment on, or something to find beautiful. In Japan, you will find that they are very indirect in their conversations, whether formal or social. They rely on context in conversations, so you will get very contextual statements, such as, I don't understand, or take care of yourself when saying goodbye. As far as business attire, the Japanese share a lot of the same guidelines as the Western cultures. For men and women, it is encouraged to wear seasonal colors, darker colors during the fall and winter months, but never all black with a white shirt, as that is thought of as funeral attire, which would be considered inappropriate. Stay away from wearing too much cologne or perfume as well. For men, most businesses do not allow beards or shaved heads, while for women, they're not to wear skirts above the knee, and they are discouraged from wearing jewelry. When negotiating in Japan or with a Japanese company, it can be a tedious, detailed, and extensive experience. They like to negotiate in teams or in multiple groups several times, so you may find yourself repeating the same information and answers repeatedly. They do this so everyone on their side is involved and they can come up with a consensus decision. The Japanese will always be polite, even if they cannot come to an agreement. They will back out of the deal with politeness as their highest priority. However, it will be extremely difficult to get another chance to negotiate the deal. Negotiation meetings will always include an interpreter due to the language barrier if you are not fluent in Japanese. You may not need to speak Japanese to do business due to the interpreter, but it would be a good idea to pick up a few key words and expressions when you are getting around town. It is still debated to this day as far as how the Japanese language became about. It is the only major country whose language's origin is still unknown. When visiting Japan, you can usually get by socially with a couple of phrases. Here are a few you should familiarize yourself with. Konnichiwa means hello. Sayonara means goodbye. Watashi no nama means my name is. Hajimasama te means nice to meet you. Hai means yes. Yeah means no. Rikai dinkenai means I don't understand. Origato means thank you. Onegahi shimasu means please. And suimasen means excuse me. Japanese is a very old language that hasn't changed for centuries. You could learn it with a part-time course. However, if you are not fluent and plan on conducting business in Japan, again, you need to hire or arrange for a translator. When preparing for your trip, there are a few things that you must keep in mind before even boarding the plane. This includes what you can and can't bring into the country, no matter how benign they may seem. In many ways, traveling to Japan is very similar to any other country. However, they are stricter about what is allowed in, including over-the-counter drugs. It is prohibited to bring anything with stimulants in it over a certain dosage, so you may have to discard some of your allergy medications, inhalers, and cold medicines. Anything can happen, and just in case you are in an emergency situation, a good idea is to write down or save important phone numbers in your phone in case of emergency. Here are a few examples of important phone numbers you may want to write down. Japan holds on to and practices centuries-old traditions and customs culturally, and that could be one of the reasons why some might consider Japan behind the times when it comes to equality. Women still face an upward battle in becoming more relevant in the workplace and in politics. In 2022, Japan ranked 116th out of 146 countries when it came to the wage gap between males and females. Japan has been adopting more of a Western culture's inclusivity when it comes to the LGBTQ community. The parliament just passed a controversial anti-discrimination law earlier this year. However, it is still illegal to get married for Japan. It is still illegal to get married in Japan for same-sex couples. A business lunch or dinner could conceivably be in the cards while in Japan. Some proper eating etiquette could go a long way for you. For instance, always wait to be seated. The host will prepare a seating location for your party and lead you to your table. Don't be surprised if you don't see any chairs, as in some settings you will be sitting on the floor on a tatami mat. Men can sit with their legs crossed. Women can too, but they are usually sitting with their legs moderately placed to one side. It is always a good idea to express gratitude for your meal before you start eating. A simple nod of appreciation will suffice. Some traditional table manners that you might want to know are removing your shoes or slippers before stepping onto your tatami mat. If you find yourself eating from a small bowl, hold the bowl with your hand and bring it close to your face. If you are sharing a large dish, it is considered polite to use the opposite end of your chopsticks that you were using for eating to transfer food from your main dish to your personal dish. Do not leave your chopsticks in your bowl or on your plate. If you are not using them, the correct move is to place them to the right of your dish using a small holder that is usually provided. Slurping noodles might be considered rude and maybe obnoxious here, but in Japan it is a perfectly acceptable and great way to show that you are enjoying your meal. In summary, Japan is a beautiful country with many interesting and unique customs and ways of life, both socially and in the business world. While you may virtually never encounter a rude business partner or client, it is a good idea to adapt to the Japanese business culture and all of its nuances. This has been a brief overview of some of the more important points to remember, but Japan can be a very complex place. So if you were to take a business trip, some more in-depth research would be necessary. But hopefully this has been a good, informative start to help you with your further research. I hope everyone learned something today, and I want to thank everybody for watching. Until next time, sayonara.